Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming to Waverly Matthews Art Brunch, and thank you from the Arts Ministry as well for coming, and we'll let Waverly get started.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, our pleasure.
Got that?
Yeah.
All right, once again, I'm going to test the volume of my voice. How are we in the back rows? Can you hear me okay? All right, good. Well, this first slide is an exact duplicate of a card that you should have on your table. So if you have any interest in contacting me, my email is on there, or if you have questions. Also, just a little bit of information about other things that I do. Speaking of which, I am going on an art pilgrimage, leading a group of pilgrims, art seekers, and we are going March 21st through 28th to Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. I've gone on a few of these trips, but they've all been in Europe. This will be a domestic trip. I just got tired of having to deal with strikes on the day we needed to get on a train to go somewhere. I don't have to deal with that. Hopefully, the United States is not going to go on strike when we need to travel between Philly and Washington. But if you have any interest, let me know. I'll email you a brochure. We have just a few spots left. I'm keeping it an intimate group, so if you have interest, please reach out to me and let me know. All right, so this is part 3. How many of you have been with me for all 3? All right, wonderful. Yeah, she's been with me nearly 10 years. She was there at the very beginning. So, faithful follower and groupie. All right, so regardless of our spiritual and philosophical beliefs, this time of year calls us to open ourselves up to a spirit of wonder. A lot of miraculous stuff happening in the stories we hear. Maybe we're a bit too scientific for them, so I want to ask us to get into that spirit of wonder as we start. So let's take a deep breath. Just have a moment of silence. Try to open ourselves up to do just that, to invite wonder in. All right, now during our first 2 gatherings, we have looked closely at a Sandro Botticelli painting, Mystic Nativity. Some would like me to move on to something else, I understand that, but I will. I just need to start off with it again, be patient, and then we'll move on to other things, okay? Now, notice the composition of this work. Notice where it takes our eyes, our attention. Where does it ultimately lead? Obviously, the golden heaven grabs our eye, but we follow that down. I wonder if my little pointer is going to work here. Oh, you see that? You see the red pointer? So we're up here at the dome, but notice how we have a funnel. See that funnel? It goes right down. Now, yes, there are these peripheral figures, so there's an hourglass movement too. But if we just look at this funnel, who is that at the end of the funnel? Mary and Jesus. And look how large they are. So definitely, Sandro Botticelli wants us to focus on these 2 individuals. They are the most important figures, not Joseph. I feel bad about Joseph. He's kind of on the periphery, all right? He's largely, let's face it, kind of a very minimal character in the Christian story, is he not? He's forgotten. Kind of feel bad for the guy. In Catholic tradition, he is, because he had a previous marriage, and that's where all have Jesus' brothers and sisters came from. Yeah, Mary is not allowed to have any other children in the Catholic tradition, okay? Just so you know. Now, I know that some of you are ex-Catholics or have a connection with the Catholic Church, so if I say anything incorrect about Catholic tradition, please raise your hand and correct me as we go along here, okay? As we learned in previous presentations, Mystic Nativity, we are presented two nativity stories. The traditional one about the birth of the Messiah, sure, but also a nativity about the culmination of that individual, his return, his rebirth, where he will bring a lasting peace and reconciliation. Now, to believe that, lasting peace and reconciliation among human beings, that really does take a lot of wonder, doesn't it? It really maxes out our capacity to wonder. But that's what this season invites us to. Suspend our rational mind and dream a little bit. Hope a little bit more than we're used to. That's what this season is about, and I hope you can do that today. Now let's back up from the moment of the nativity. I want to do that right now. The nativity story actually begins not with the birth of a child. It begins with confusion. It begins with disruption. It begins with fear. It starts when Mary is visited by the angel Gabriel, who tells her she's going to be miraculously pregnant by the Holy Spirit. This act is called the Annunciation. Now, there are many Annunciation paintings I could have chosen from the Renaissance era, but I wanted to begin with this one by Fra Angelico. As the angel gives the news of the impending miraculous pregnancy, a divine light shines upon her, almost Zeus-like, if you see some of that imagery. But I chose this work because of the figures on the left. Who are they? Adam and Eve, yes. But what are they doing in this painting? Well, here's a reminder of their story. Their thirst, their craving for the fruit of knowledge, craving for divine wisdom, led, as we know, to hardship and death. And somehow, through some cosmic equation, that got transferred to the rest of us. But the truth is, their story, Adam and Eve's story, that's my story. I think you'll find it's yours as well. I would have chosen the fruit as well if I had been there and condemned all of you to mortality. I'm sorry, selfish of me, but I do have a craving for knowledge. How about you if you were there? What would you have done? Would you have chosen to remain in the bliss of ignorance or chosen the fruit of knowledge?
For me, it has more to do with following rules. I'm a real good rule follower.
Okay.
So if I'd been told not to do it, I probably would.
How many of you like to sin boldly? When you sin, you just like, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going all in. All right? Okay, well, you can relate to Eve, okay? Let's modernize this story, though, because I think it seems archaic when interpreted as it usually is. When we were young and lived at home, hopefully it was like a nice garden, an Eden, where all of our major decisions in life were made by our parents, and where food and shelter somehow magically reappeared every single day of our lives. Never had to worry about it. But when we leave home, because of our desire for that fruit of knowledge, isn't that why we leave home? We want to pursue fruit that will get us, I'll put this in quotes, we want the fruit that will get us high. Figuratively, high on life experience, say like the fruit of romantic love. As we all know, it's incredibly exciting and gives us some of the greatest thrills. It also causes some of the worst hardship and pain and suffering. And not only do we suffer as a result of our pursuit of knowledge and experience, the wisdom of experience, other people suffer who are in our wake. Let's be honest, right? That happens. We cause a lot of collateral damage in our pursuit of that fruit of knowledge. Our pursuit of life's wisdom and experiences inevitably brings pain and division, and that is why we need Advent, a time of healing and reconciliation, peace on earth. Now, in this painting, Mary is going to become the new Eve. That's why Eve is there. And she's going to give birth to the new Adam, reversing the consequences of the fall. But more on that later. Now, Botticelli painted a very famous version of this. How many of you have seen this? Great form, stunning colors. Anybody seen this? I think it's stunning. However, I'm not a big fan of Mary's pose. She looks like she's avoiding being tackled by the angel Gabriel. She's in a Heisman pose, is she not? But her posture is meant to express alarm at the appearance of the angel, distress. According to Luke, quote, Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. Now, Mary in this painting appears to reject the news. Wouldn't you? I mean, she was just a humble small-town girl, wanted to start a family, not give birth to the Savior of the world. Kind of a big responsibility to load. For those of you who are or have been married, when you were first betrothed, think back. When you were first betrothed, what legacy for your life and for your future children did you have? Or did you even think about it? Take a moment with that. And by the way, I have little sheets of paper. So will you pick up the one with the tree? There are pens as well. You can write on the back of this paper. We're going to use the front picture at the end. But if you want to take notes, use the back. What legacy for your life did you have in mind when you were betrothed to get married? And did you have any hopes for your child's legacy as well? Now, perhaps my favorite Annunciation painting is this one by artist Henry Osawa Tanner. I love his religious works. How many of you are familiar with Henry Osawa Tanner? Very talented, sold very well, except not in the United States. He spent his life mainly in France. That's where he needed to go to have a successful career. Anybody know why? He was African American. This is the late 19th century. I'm wondering if am I doing something that's causing the interruption here? Bonnie, do you know? Okay. It just does that, huh? In this painting, we do not see a human-like angel Gabriel, just divine light. And if we zoom in a little, we can look at the eyes of Mary. Look at her whole expression. Look at her demeanor. What do you think she is experiencing? You got to be kidding me. Fear. Questioning. Yeah, she definitely looks frightened. However, I see, I could be wrong, I see a little bit of a captivated expression as well. Like, wow, this is pretty cool, although I'm scared to death. You know? Anybody else? Bewildered, very good. Notice she doesn't possess a halo. She's just an ordinary, very vulnerable young woman in this image. So which of these three Marys resonates with you and why? Feel free to write your answers down on that paper or share them. Which one? The far right. I figured she would be interesting to most of you. She's the most like us. Anybody here play football or rugby? Anybody into the Botticelli? Okay. For Angelico, look at that beautiful blue. Who wouldn't want to wear a garment like that? Not into Mary Halos. Well, think of them as a golden hat. You know, the kind you would take to the races or something. All right. Despite her humble beginnings, though, Mary's humble beginnings, this is where she's ultimately going to go. This is going to be her legacy. Queen of Heaven. Something that may be difficult for many of us not raised in the Catholic or the Eastern Orthodox tradition is this exalted status of Mary in these traditions. She's almost divine-like. Now, theologically, no, can't be divine, but she's almost there. She's venerated to such a degree and she's prayed to so fervently in some traditions that's made me wonder, as someone raised in the Protestant tradition, what in the world is going on? Why all the fuss about her? She's hardly mentioned, really, in the scriptures. Well, let's trace her veneration to see if I can answer my question. Now, this is perhaps the earliest image of Mary with the Christ child. It's from a catacomb in Rome. She's nursing the infant Christ in a very familiar posture to most of us. But for the first 200 years of Christianity, Mary really wasn't in the picture. But something happened between the 3rd and 5th centuries. Interest in her greatly expanded until images like this one spread all over the empire. Now, this icon dates back to the 5th or 6th century. Here she is haloed now. She is the protectress of the Roman people. Quite a legacy for a young girl from a backwoods town on the edge of the empire, don't you think? This one, no, I don't believe so. This is still in Rome, I believe. But I am going to be showing a Mary from the Hagia Sophia. Yeah. Now, to figure out why she went from largely ignored in the beginning to the protectress of Rome and eventually the Queen of Heaven, we need to look at what was happening religiously in the Roman Empire around the time of the birth of Christianity. The religious landscape of Rome at the time was anything but simple. It was bustling. It was competitive, marketplace, where gods, cults, and devotional practice all vied for the hearts and minds and prayers of ordinary people. And among the many deities worshipped across the Mediterranean world, one figure stood out above all others for her remarkable reach and emotional power. That is Isis, the Egyptian goddess who had transformed into a Mediterranean super deity during the Hellenistic and Roman periods. Now, this is the holy trinity of the Egyptian religion. Let me give you a quick summary of their story for those who don't know it. Osiris, he's the one in the middle. He was the king of Egypt, but was tricked by his evil brother Set, who chopped him up into a bunch of pieces and scattered them throughout Egypt. But his devoted wife Isis searched tirelessly across Egypt to find the scattered pieces of his body. And through her magic and devotion and ritual knowledge, she reassembled her husband and briefly restored him to life, conceiving their son Horus. That's some magic. Although Osiris cannot remain among the living, he is reborn as the Lord of the underworld, while Isis becomes the model of the faithful wife and divine mother whose power over death makes renewal and resurrection possible. Isis is the figure of salvation in this story. All right? Horus, he's hidden and protected by his mother, a la Moses-like, while he grows up into adulthood. And he later challenges Set to avenge his father's murder. He wins. And in this way, Horus embodies the triumph of order over chaos and legitimizes pharaonic rule, while Osiris reigns eternally as Lord of the dead, all because of the work of Isis. So she is a big deal. When Alexander the Great... You're getting ahead of me. You're going to see that in a second. Yeah. When Alexander the Great's general, Ptolemy Soter I, took over leadership of Egypt and Palestine and Syria, he brought the story of Isis and her worship to the rest of the Roman Empire. And she very quickly gained a devoted following across all sectors of Roman society, from ruling elites all the way down to the poor and common workers. Here we see her Roman and Hellenized versions. Now listen to this. She was particularly popular. Here are her peak years of popularity, 1st century BC to the 3rd century AD. But at that point, veneration of her started to wane until by the 6th century, she's pretty much disappeared. Now, why was she so popular at the time of the birth of Christianity? Well, during this era, mystery cults, initiatory religions that promised special knowledge, divine protection, or personal salvation, they offered something fundamentally different than traditional state religion. These cults framed their spiritual benefits as something an individual could personally possess, a secret teaching, a transformative ritual, an experience that personally changed one's status in relation to death and the divine. It was popular across all genders. Men worshipped her, and classes. Here you go. These figurines of Isis, especially her nursing a young horse, were found throughout the empire. Do they look familiar to you? Her myths and rituals emphasized practical concerns that matter to everyone, regardless of social status. Her mythological role, restoring a murdered Osiris and raising a vulnerable child, Horus, they centered on her spousal roles of love and support and maternal acts of healing, protection, and nurture. And across several centuries of Mediterranean art, a remarkably stable visual formula appears repeatedly in Egyptian and later Greco-Roman objects. This pose that you see here, mother offering milk in a frontal, intimate presentation, becomes one of the most recognizable emblems of divine maternity in the ancient world. The goddess sits upright, often on a throne that emphasizes her royal status. The infant is held to her breast in a gesture that is simultaneously nurturing as well as protective. And the composition invites us into an intimate relationship with this divine pair. Now, when Christianity eventually rose to become the empire's dominant religion, a fascinating phenomenon occurred. Many features of popular devotion did not simply vanish. Instead, iconography, ritual forms, and emotional expectations, they simply migrated, competed, and underwent reinterpretation. The visual parallel of Mary with Isis obviously is striking. The combination of nurture and majesty translate from the pagan to the Christian context quite smoothly. This visual similarity, though, has led many writers over the centuries to suggest a very direct descent. Isis simply became Mary when Christianity replaced paganism. That's a little bit too simple of an understanding. For one thing, Isis also represented, remember, the loving and devoted queen of her king, her spouse. She looked over a vast territory to find him and restore him, if only for a brief moment, long enough to get pregnant. She is the savior figure. Mary is not a savior herself. She gives birth to a savior. And Isis's role as loving and devoted partner is not fully replicated in Mary. Husband Joseph, like we mentioned before, poor guy. He really vanishes from the story. Their loving relationship really hasn't been depicted in art. I don't know if it's ever been depicted in art. Maybe in modern Christmas cards, We'll see it a little bit. It's kind of a shame, though. There's no real archetype, powerful archetype of the image of a devoted husband. Really isn't. Does that explain a lot, ladies? Just wondering. This Byzantine icon is a revered type of the Virgin Mary holding the Christ child, pointing to him as the path to salvation. Now, the visual echo of Isis remains detectable. That's still there. Intimate relationship between mother and child. But the meaning has been thoroughly Christianized. Isis now has disappeared as a savior figure. So while the visual resemblance is undeniable, the actual process of transmission was a complex negotiation in which familiar forms were given new meanings. Do you remember my analogy of the tree to describe a spiritual tradition? That was in the first presentation, I believe. Well, over time, we graft in ideas of other traditions into our own. Like I've grafted in aspects of Buddhism and meditation into my own spiritual path. All right? But I change them, I alter them a bit in the process. Well, Christianity did just that with pagan tradition as well. Now, I believe the Madonnas of the Renaissance period represent the peak of this transformation from Isis to Mary. And the artist, I believe, who was the greatest master of the Madonna, some of you might disagree with me, I hope not, because if you do, you're wrong, is Raphael. Many of his Madonnas include a young John the Baptist, the cousin of Jesus. John holds a goldfinch in his hand in this one, and Christ is reaching out to touch it. But I want you to notice Mary's expression. She's radiant, attentive, loving. The ideal image of a mother. Well, now let's consider our own mother. Is that an unfair comparison? Maybe, I don't know. Look, our own mother wasn't perfect like this, all right? So I'm going to ask you this because this question kept coming up for me, and I don't have a clear, definitive answer. So I'm going to ask you, what role do idealized mothers play in helping us deal with our own mothers and life in general? What role does an idealized mother like the Madonna play? Words of wisdom. She's reading a book. She's a teacher. What was that, part of a club? Did I hear that? A book club. Well, that was going to be my next point. The book signifies Mary's devout life, making her a model of spiritual devotion for lay people. It symbolizes her piety, her knowledge, and her spiritual wisdom. Yes, you want to go back?
Well, these two are the first babies we've seen that look anything like a baby and not those adults.
Yeah. The Byzantine icons typically have some of the ugliest Jesuses I've ever seen. Don't they? Whew. They're basically a man shrunk down to the size of a baby. So anyway, yeah. Sorry about that. Okay. Here's another Madonna by Raphael, again with a young John the Baptist. This one shows one of the most beautiful embraces between a mother and child in the history, I think, of art. Take a moment with it. Does gazing on such a work bring back warm memories for you? I hope so, but maybe for some of us, it brings soothing comfort to more difficult memories. I don't know. Really stunning. Now, in some art, though, Mary is more than just the affectionate, attentive mother of a toddler. Here's another beautiful work by Henry Osawa Tanner showing a matured, nurturing role of Mary as a mentor to her son. She is in the role of the tutor, the teacher, helping her son grow in wisdom. So quite a legacy Mary is building for herself, or the church built for her. But that legacy is about to become grander. She will become Theotokos, the God bearer. She looks more important than Jesus in that image, doesn't she? The Hagia Sophia, that's on my bucket list, Fran. She will become ultimately the Queen of Heaven, seated on the throne that symbolizes not just maternal authority, but her role in the cosmic order of redemption. Surrounded by a choir of music-making angels, here Mary kneels to accept her crown from Jesus and God. You probably recognize God from Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel. Same color robe, same look. In some Christian traditions, not the Protestant one, Mary serves as an archetypal feminine figure. When we speak of an archetypal feminine in religious imagery, we are referring to a cross-cultural cluster of qualities that repeatedly appear in goddess figures and female religious imagery. Maternity and nourishment, protection and intercession, sorrowful compassion, queenly authority, and the promise of rebirth or continuity. Now, these traits are not identical across cultures and all time, but they form what we'd call a family resemblance, a recognizable pattern that makes figures like Isis and Mary both emotionally powerful, socially useful. Now, let me ask you, and you might want to write this down, how many of you have a powerful archetypal feminine figure in your life? And if you do, you can write that down for yourself if you want, or share it. It could be living. When they die, they obviously will be venerated by you and prayed to, right? Or no, not necessarily. Maybe you do like Isis. Some of you might be a devotee of Isis. I don't know. How many of you have one? You don't have to say who it is, but just raise your hand if you have one. I'm curious, how many of those who identify with the masculine archetype here, persuasion, have a feminine archetypal person? All right, well, that's good. I'm working hard on building mine up. I'm just in the beginning, though. Yes, sir. The one in the pink? That's God. Remember Sistine Chapel up, Remember, he's in the same row, but he's mooning us from the chapel ceiling. Yeah, she's even whiter, yeah. Mm-hmm. It means they're tailoring the painting to their audience. Mm-hmm. Well, those of you who are familiar with a lot of the Magi, Adoration of the Magi paintings, know, right, that often there's an African as one of the kings. That's to represent that Christ is for all the world. The known world at the time was Europe, the East, Near East, like Persia, and Africa. So you have all three of those sites represented. Now here's another wonderful nativity image that Sandro Botticelli didn't paint, but he would have been very familiar with because it used to be in the Medici's private chapel in Florence. They would kneel and pray to this image. So Sandro was very familiar because he was over at their house all the time. We have Mary center. God is above her. John the Baptist, young, on the left. The old man praying in the back, that's not Joseph. Sorry, Joseph didn't make an appearance. No, that's some saint. Zoom in a little bit. Notice how the artist has depicted her in such a way that we simply cannot take our eyes off of her. As archetypal figures go, during the Renaissance, she had no equal. Just like Isis for a time in the Roman Empire had no equal. All right, get your paper, scrap paper, notebook, anything you have, and pen. We're going to do a quick exercise. Just answer a few questions. Do you believe our culture is lacking archetypal feminine figures? Politically. Could a figure from a movie be an archetypal feminine figure? Yeah. I mean, if James Bond can be a male one, you know? Wonder Woman, maybe? A lot of our archetypal figures, though, are superheroes, aren't they? Superheroes. Anybody have an historical one, or can think of an historical one? Helen Keller. Joan of Arc, big one. Joan of Arc, that's a great one. What was that? Eleanor Roosevelt, another very big one. Susan B. Anthony. What's that? Mother Teresa. Absolutely. All right, let's look at some of these other questions. Who would you personally choose as your archetypal feminine figure? Think. You can write that down. Write multiple names down if you're not quite sure which one you would choose. And what attributes would such a figure need for you to be able to extend devotion towards them? What attributes would they need for you personally? And can you see yourself offering devotion to such a figure? Now, archetypes are sticky in cultural terms, a compelling visual or ritual expression that answers core human needs like the fear of death, desire for protection, longing for a caring divine presence. They're all important in our archetypal feminine figures. Now, when Christianity supplanted pagan worship in the Roman Empire, church leaders faced a practical pastoral challenge. How could they help people who had grown up with deeply ingrained patterns of devotion? People who instinctively turned to divine feminine figures like Isis for comfort and protection. How could they understand and embrace the new faith? One solution, whether it was consciously chosen or organically developed, was to emphasize Mary's role in ways that could fulfill similar emotional and devotional functions. Ultimately, it's the archetypal nature of the divine feminine, nourishing mother, compassionate intercessor, protective queen, that best explains the persistence of these motifs across religious boundaries and time periods. The archetype addresses human universal needs that transcend any particular belief system. The point is, we need archetypes to inspire us, to guide us, to console us. So it's appropriate to look at the great spiritual traditions of history or art for those archetypes. Yes? That's a very good question, but I think they always accuse the Catholics of slipping into worshiping her as a goddess. They always blame them on that and always were worried about idolatry in all forms. So, and that's why they were iconoclastic, that they didn't like art, didn't want art in churches, because an image could lead to idolatry. So John Calvin in particular, I've had a long quarrel with that guy over that. Luther was okay. Calvin didn't like art in churches. In fact, if you look at an old Presbyterian Reformed church, you'll often see only a cross. It's the only thing on the walls in an old Reformed church.
Yeah, if you look upstairs, the only cross that we have is a form of Stephen. I mean, it's totally
Yeah. Yeah, you guys have definitely come a long way. You've got art everywhere in this building now. But what if we looked all the way back for inspiring figures to the Garden of Eden? I'd like you to imagine that this place was real, okay? And we were there. Imagine. Now, my eyes would be on the tree and the fruit that's in it. I would be listening to that serpent. How about you? Would you be listening to the serpent? Checking out the camel. A lot of exotic animals there to grab our attention, that's for sure. But the reason I would probably be at that tree looking up is that in this image, my archetype would be, or my devotion would be drawn towards Eve as an archetype, because I can relate to her. I understand her desire, her craving for divine wisdom. Adam, in many of these paintings, Adam looks like a dolt. He really does. He was painted that way, kind of a kind of a buffoon who's gullible, you know? Why am I bringing up Eve again after a discussion of Mary? Well, recall what I said in the beginning. In the Christian tradition, just as Christ became the new Adam, Mary became the new Eve. So take a moment now, before I move on, to find yourself in this work and identify who you would be. Now let me ask you, when did you leave Eden, metaphorically speaking? When did you leave Eden? When did you lose your childhood idol and innocence? What was the result of that? Probably a very mixed bag of positive and negative emotions and experiences, perhaps eureka moments followed by deep confusion and pain. Let me ask you, was it worth it? Partaking of that fruit, leaving Eden, being expelled from Eden. So hold that thought. All right, how many of you put up a Christmas tree this time of year? All right, most of you do. The modern Christmas tree actually started in Germany during the 16th century. I was surprised that it was that late. The modern Christmas tree, that is. Families would go outside and decorate a tree with fruits and nuts, symbolizing that the tree was from the original Garden of Eden. Let me ask you, what kind of ornaments hang on your tree? Are they heavily laden with symbolic meaning? All of those ornaments? That's good. Which ones are most significant to you? My guess is probably some with a nostalgic nature to them. My mom still has a picture of me when I'm 3 or 4, made into an ornament that she sticks up there. All right? Think about what's on your tree. Think about what those ornaments, when you look at them, do they inspire you? Do they motivate you? Do they remind you of the legacy that you want to build? I would like us to imagine now a holiday tree that is very personal to you. To you. It would be like a Christmas tree, but I want to call it a legacy tree. Your personal legacy tree. And we're going to need, in order to decorate it, inspiration from Botticelli's Mystical Nativity. I'm sorry, folks. Last time you'll see it. Let's look again at the top of the Mystic Nativity and the ribbons that the dancing angels wear. Those ribbons, as you can recall, bear the 12 virtues of the Virgin Mary, derived from a sermon by Savonarola, and they are, among others, mother of her father, daughter of her son, bride of God, sole queen of the world, sanctuary beyond words. These are the attributes of her legacy. What attributes did your archetypal feminine figure that you identified have, or what attributes do they need to have for you? because these are going to become very important for you when thinking about your own legacy. Notice the form of the composition of the mystic nativity and compare it to the Garden of Eden painting we just saw. Notice any similarities. The composition. Three stories, yeah. I recently did an art brunch presentation on treescapes and the symbology of trees over vast periods of time and culture, and how nearly every culture has a concept of a sacred tree of life. And the top is always representing the heavens. Notice where it is and its shape compared to the mystic nativity. All right, and its trunk coming down. And it sits on Adam and Eve, and if we draw an imaginary trunk on the right, it sits on Mary, the new Eve, and Christ child, the new Adam. So it inspired me to rethink our holiday tree as a legacy tree. So one final exercise to close us out. What kind of legacy would you like to have 10 years after you're gone? 100 years after you are gone? How about 1,000 years after you're gone? How? The legacy your life will have. What sort of legacy? How long will it stretch out? How ambitious are you about your legacy? But it's a good exercise because it'll change the way we live in the present. The thing I fear the most is being in a hospice program with regrets. I don't want to be there. And most people who have regrets refer to not living the life they thought they should have lived. In other words, establish and build a legacy they thought was unique to them and they should have built. I don't want any of us to be in that position. That's why I'm emphasizing it today. Yes. Christ is the new Adam. Well, first of all, that's scriptural, but because Adam had sinned, we needed the person who can reverse the death process. Adam brought death into the world, so we need a figure who takes death upon himself to take it out of our life. And that is how Adam became equated with the Christ child. Anyway, it is a stretch, I think. Recall our exercise last week when we considered our resources, our wealth, and how best to use them to accomplish a significant goal. This will become a part of our Christmas tree. It'll be an ornament that we put on our legacy tree. If a painting like the Mystic Nativity were created by a great artist who was inspired by your life, imagine an artist inspired by your life, and they string those ribbons that the angels are carrying, they string them along the tree, your legacy tree. What are they going to say? What do you think they're going to say? Go ahead and write it down. What would you want those ribbons to say? Eventually, what you want on those ribbons are the attributes that you're going to need, the character traits, the resources you're going to need, who you will need to become to fulfill your legacy ambitions. You're going to write all of these down. And when you go home today, I want you to find some ribbons or create some. Cut them strips out of an old tablecloth or something and transfer what you wrote onto those ribbons and then hang them on your holiday tree. Anybody have a tree at home that they could think of to do this exercise with, build a legacy tree? Any of you have a special tree, say, in your backyard? Like this one. This is in the backyard of one of our community members who lives in Dallas, tunes it every week. He sent me this because he knows my favorite tree is the maple. I mean, it's stunning to look at. It's got one of the most beautiful shapes. I love Japanese maples in particular. I wish I had one of these in my backyard because it would become my legacy tree. And it would be strewn with ribbons every Advent season as a reminder of what I did or did not accomplish the year before and what I hope to fulfill in the following year. That's the value of this exercise and getting yourself a legacy tree. Let's see if we can tune in for one last slide. There's a sheet of paper. Flip over that sheet of paper that you're using for notes. There should be a little image of a tree with lines. Do you see that? It's this tree. Looks like a Charlie Brown Christmas tree, doesn't it? It's from Caspar David Friedrich. But I put lines there. So if you don't have a physical tree, just jot down your thoughts on an image of a tree. That's all you need to do. And put that somewhere where you'll see it regularly this Advent season. I'm thinking about, at least next season, purchasing a special tree. And this is going to become my new holiday ritual. So I'm curious. I'm going to open it up now. How many of you had something to write down on a ribbon or on this sheet? Had something. All right, good. Anybody want to be bold enough to share it or discuss the process? How many of you think about your legacy on a regular basis? How many of you think it's a wise idea to start doing that more? One thing I've said before, I don't know if I've said it to you here at First Congregational, but I know Jane and Berta have heard it, and Chrissy has heard it. We never retire from purpose and mission until we're 6 feet under, or we're in an urn. But until then, we still have a purpose and a mission to accomplish. All right? We're here for a reason. So something valuable, your life is valuable. The things you do, the people you meet, the people you influence, the things you do, the use of your resources are all going to have a major impact. They are a part of your legacy, for good, for ill, for great impact, or for small impact. But we need to be conscious of that so that we can have eternal life in the sense of building a great legacy that will impact people in a positive way for many years after we're gone. All right?
So I was called to be a teacher, and I taught, and I taught, and so it's hard was when you retire, because then you feel that it all has to be basically redefined, so you have to find where your purpose is.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I
Yep. One advantage of retirement from work is that you have the freedom to choose what kind of impact you want to have, in what areas. I mean, that's nice, right? Now, as a teacher, obviously, you built a great legacy so far already. Impacted kids who are going to impact kids who are going to impact kids for generations, you know? But you're not done. None of us are done. So if you don't have a clear picture of the legacy that you want, well, then that is your purpose now. It's just to figure that out. And maybe a legacy tree will help as a new ritual every Advent season, incorporating that into your life to help you keep on track. I know I need that sort of thing. I get off track pretty easily, you know? All right, any questions? Need me to go back to a slide? I'll do that. Any comments? Where is it? My guess is somewhere in Germany because the artist is German. Oh, the actual painting. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant where he painted it. I got really lucky. I think it was at the National, no, wait, where was this? What? It was the National Gallery. Went to the National Gallery and they had an exhibit of Caspar David Friedrich works at the time. I got lucky. I didn't know it was going to be there. Just noticed the shepherd. I told you it was an Advent tree. He just put a little tiny symbol there. Oh, the lines are for you to write on. See, I had to create an image that I could print out for you so you could write that on. So you can start your Advent tree. Anybody else have a comment or question? Yeah, what we do in the present, you're right, we need to be absolutely present, but what we do in the present, and this is why we need to be conscious of our actions in the moment, every moment, is because it will have a legacy. It will reverberate through centuries, believe it or not. How present we are with an individual, you know? Do we attend to them when they're talking to us? And if so, we brighten their day just enough to perhaps maybe they will then go and spread that good energy to someone else who will then use that energy to accomplish something great. You know, it reverberates. You know, so we need to be presently conscious of our legacy, the impact we have, just by being present. You're right. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. Legacy is now. You know, we often think of it as something way down the road. But by then, we have regrets. If we don't think of it now, we'll have regrets later. Mm-hmm. Well, it has a central role in Italy. We had a couple members from Italy on my 9 o'clock Zoom call this morning who said that Mary is so significant in Italy because family is so significant in Italy. Now, it's a chicken and egg thing. I don't know if the veneration of Mary led to the importance and significance of family or it's the reverse. I don't know. But all I know is in cultures that venerate Mary, family is central in those cultures. So obviously that's a major impact it's having.
Who decided, you brought this up, it got me thinking of it the first time. I mean, where is Joseph? How come Joseph doesn't get some credit for raising this kid? You went all the way back to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And is it because the priests, all the male priests, want to be the father figure for the flock and not have another male icon that they created Mary?
Yeah. Well, first of all, initially, Christ was the model for men, I think. But I don't think he could be a complete model. So I think we did miss out. the Western world at least, missed out by not having a powerful archetypal father-husband figure in the tradition. I think it's to our detriment. I'm sorry, could somebody help me with that question? I couldn't hear. Oh, yeah, well, a lot of paintings have been burned. Savonarola at the Bonfire of the Vanities in Florence, Italy, burned a lot of paintings. Estimates are that 10 to 15% of all the paintings in Florence at the time burned up. That was 1497. Mm-hmm. That's what is estimated. That's what I've seen in the literature as an estimate. Yeah. Sad, isn't it? And not to mention books, too. You know, philosophy books, literature, sad. All right, well, thank you very much. I hope this has inspired you to consider thinking more about your legacy and creating rituals around that. And if you want to continue the conversation, you now have my email. It's on that information card. By the way, that image is also another Caspar David Friedrich work. So, all right, thank you.